Sunday, July 14, 2013. This is Mercedes Diesel Guy, and this is my 1995 Subaru Legacy L Outback. Before I get into today's video, I just want to thank you all my viewers and subscribers. This weekend, I actually passed the 1,000 subscribers mark, and I expect to pass over 1 million total video views this summer, so thank you for watching. Today, I'm changing the brake fluid on the Outback here. Basically, it's kind of the last fluid I haven't changed yet on the car. When I bought the car in January, the previous owner told me he'd had the brakes changed back in October. And I assumed that the mechanic who changed the brakes had also changed the brake fluid. Well, having driven the car, I am pretty sure now that the brake fluid is still pretty old. Mostly because I'm getting some brake fade while I'm driving. So I'm going to change the fluid today. And the very first step in doing that is actually to make sure that all 4 bleeder screws can be loosened and turned. Because you don't want to get halfway through a brake fluid change and then not be able to move the next bleeder screw. Okay, I was able to get this bleeder screw turning. In the end, the tool I ended up using was my 3/8 inch drive ratchet with 10mm deep socket, and I was able to get that over the bleeder screw here so it wouldn't slip. Well, I was able to get the rear bleeder screws loosened, but I noticed another problem when I did so. Once I got them loosened, no brake fluid was coming out, indicating that the brake fluid bleeders were actually clogged. So thankfully, I had some brand new bleeder screws in the garage still from a previous Subaru, but anyhow, I had new bleeder screws, and it's worth, just in case, picking up some brand new bleeder screws before you do the job. So, the very first thing you're going to want to do is actually extract all the old brake fluid from the master cylinder, or at least from the reservoir. And the way I do that is like so. First, obviously, I'd remove the cap. And this is actually probably about the first time I've had the cap off, and I can see the brake fluid is definitely old and brown and discolored. If it's not new, if it's not, you know, relatively clear, it's probably pretty old. So, in this case, it actually looks very old. So, then I get a container in which to pour the old fluid. And then finally I extract it. And in order to do that I use this. This here, of course, being a dedicated turkey baster, something I picked up at the dollar store, and it is only used for brake fluid. It lives in the garage. You know, don't go into the kitchen and take the turkey baster from there. If you do, go buy a new turkey baster for the kitchen, and then again, just to be on the safe side, you know, don't use that one on your brake fluid because you don't want any contaminants in here. So basically, you just extract. And once you've extracted absolutely as much fluid as you can, you want to fill it up with brand new fluid. This is what I bought. Just regular old .3. So I'm going to fill this up right now. Okay, at this point you want to leave the cap off the master cylinder reservoir, because as you're bleeding the brakes, you want to be able to fill up the fluid from time to time. You don't want that reservoir running dry, because if it does, you could introduce air into the lines and then you're going to have to start the bleed process all over again, which is just a waste of time and resources. So most cars, for what it's worth, are bled at the calipers, or in some cases wheel cylinders, starting with the wheel furthest from the master cylinder and ending with the wheel closest to the master cylinder. The Subaru is actually just a little bit different. The bleed order is front right, rear left, front left, and then rear right. So I am going to reposition the camera by the right front caliper, and we're going to get started there. Okay, now before we get started bleeding, you're just going to need a couple of things. First off, you're going to need a section of rubber hose, preferably clear, that'll fit right over the bleeder screw there, nice and tight. Also, you're going to want a bottle to catch the old fluid. This is just kind of the standard bottle I use. This doesn't have to be an Orangina bottle. And you can see I have a little bit of fresh brake fluid here in the bottom. That's just so you don't accidentally, suck air back into the caliper, into the system. I have never found that to be an absolute necessity, but it's a good way of going about doing this. So, and then you're going to want the right wrench for the caliper. Now, this here is a 10mm flare nut wrench, which is technically what you're supposed to use. However, I find that just standard 10mm wrench, but the round 12-point end also works pretty well. So, I'm gonna get started here. And basically, the process is you have a helper sit in the car, hold the brake pedal, and when they're holding the pedal, you release the bleeder screw, and you drain fluid here into the bottle, and then you tighten up the screw, have them release the pedal, pump again, you open the screw again, and when it starts slowing down, tighten up the screw. Repeat that until you have clear, fresh fluid coming through, and all the while, keep monitoring the level inside the master cylinder reservoir. So we are going to get started here. I'm going to try with the flare nut wrench, which also has a nice gap here to get over the hose. So at this point, I'm going to ask my helper, are you ready there in the car? Okay. I want you to press and hold the brake pedal. Okay, release. Press and hold again. Did you press and hold again? Okay. And now I'm going to just double check the fluid level inside the master cylinder reservoir. Okay, fluid level's good, so we're going to continue. I'm still not convinced this is coming out 100% clear yet. So press and hold. Okay, fluid seems to be coming out nice and clear now, so I'm just going to tighten this up and then we can move on to the next caliper. And I didn't show you bleeding all of the other 3 calipers only because it's identical. So at this point, what you're going to want to do is go back to the master cylinder reservoir, top it off to the maximum mark, close the cap, and then what I did is I took some brake parts cleaner, which you see right here, sprayed down each caliper just to get the few drops of brake fluid that did spill, and then you want to put the rubber caps back on. And this, of course, is to keep dirt and crud out of the inside of the bleeder screw and to prevent corrosion buildup inside it. And that way, if you get these, chances are you're not going to need to, replace the bleeder screws next time. What else worth mentioning here? You want to change your brake fluid every 2 years. Hopefully this was informative. So this is Mercedes Diesel Guy. Thanks for watching. And once you have the master cylinder topped off and recapped and the bleeder screws recapped, you're going to want to put your wheels back on, torque them down, and then you're done. So thanks for watching.